Hello, would I buy a new Tesla Model 3 again? Well, that's what I've been asking myself recently, as I've now driven 20,000 miles in my Tesla Model 3 over 25 months. So it's a good landmark, so please stick around if you can to find out what I've decided. Hi friends, I'm Nigel. Welcome to everyone. Please subscribe if you can and hit that bell for regular updates. Well, first of all, picking up the new Tesla Model 3 and driving it out of Bristol, I felt like a learner driver, not like a driver of 50 years experience from RAF troop carrying aircraft loading equipment, as well as trucks and more than a dozen rep cars over the years, diesel and petrol. I've estimated I've driven over 1 million miles, and at my peak as a rep, as a company car driver, I was doing over 50,000 miles a year. Many of the miles I did were in diesel, something that I'm not particularly proud of, but in those days there wasn't a lot of choice. Some were petrol. Anyway, I had a lot of new company cars, but always bought used second-hand for my own use. So the Tesla, coming in at over £40,000, was more than 4 times what I'd paid before. I used to think 15,000 for a new car. Wondered how people did it, because I never did. I never went over £10,000 on a used car. However, the time was right, my circumstances were right, and it was going to be my very last car, and on paper it looked brilliant. I watched a lot of YouTubers, English and American, and decided to order one. My very first Tesla supercharging experience was at Michael Wood services on the M5. I couldn't understand why people were saying it takes so long to charge a Tesla. We simply plugged it in and we went off to get a coffee and stretch our legs and used the toilets. Walking back to the Tesla, the phone notified me it would be charged enough for our next destination in 5 minutes time, and it seemed so simple, not having to put smelly diesel in the car, which always seemed to make the hands smell a lot, which I never really liked. In our first year, we drove to Scotland from Cornwall. We went to Wales, the Isle of Wight, and we used the Tesla superchargers a lot. Most of our miles was done on road trips. During the week, I'm retired. I don't use the car a great deal, preferring to walk and cycle if I can. So at the end of the first year, the insurance went down a little, and that was last year in 2022. There were no repairs or servicing or tyre replacements, so zero costs apart from electricity for the car. Prices have gone up and down with petrol and diesel, but comparing it to my Audi A3, the car I had before, charging at home costs 1/8 the price of diesel or petrol compared with my Audi A3, which did 45 miles to the gallon, which is actually the average in the UK. Now, if I charge at a Tesla supercharger, the price comparison is 55% the cost of diesel or petrol. In other words, almost half price. Yes, I know prices went up and down over those 2 years, but I regularly did the price comparisons. Sometimes it was down to 50% the cost of supercharging, but more recently it's 55% compared to diesel. Now, the second year we drove to Portsmouth and took the Brittany ferry to Santander, and we drove down through northern Spain, Basque Country, down to Portugal and Porto, and then onto the Algarve, and where it's got warm winters and beautiful beaches. Every single Tesla supercharger worked fine. We never had to queue. We didn't go in August. I did read in August that there were a few queues, as so often there are queues. But it seems to be quite a shock to say when you read of Tesla supercharger queues. We never had any in January and February, and most of the time tried to drive around the UK, not at the busiest times. We don't have kids, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I try and avoid queues. So we never had any issue whatsoever with any of the superchargers driving in Spain and Portugal, and I even used some of the local chargers using the Mayo app as well, which was very good. In fact, most of the time there was barely 10% of people at the Tesla superchargers in Portugal and Spain. And the advantages of driving outside the UK is the Tesla superchargers are cheaper everywhere you go. But then again, so is petrol and diesel. Also, the second year we drove to the very top of Scotland twice and back again. One occasion we had a snowstorm, and then on another a rainstorm more recently. But the Tesla always was a pleasure to drive, more than any other car vehicle I'd ever had. In the second year, the Tesla comprehensive insurance did go up, but then so did house insurance and a few other insurances I have. I did check that the Audi A3 insurance always went up, but you can't do a direct comparison with the Tesla Model 3 and the Audi because it's a much faster and better and more expensive car. The only thing I do miss on the Audi A3 compared to the Tesla is the hatchback, and obviously in UK, Europe, we prefer hatchbacks. There's a lot more things you can do with them. You can actually get a fair size in the back of the Tesla Model 3. You can put the seats down, you can even sleep in it. But a hatch, you can get sort of bigger and bulkier things in, and it makes the car a little bit more versatile. So that is one thing that I did prefer on the Audi A3. I never had any desire to go 500 miles without stopping, and 2.5 hours for me, it's comfortable. The Tesla Model 3 standard range, I was always ready for a break, usually before 150 miles. So the real range over 20,000 miles is 206 miles. Was great for me, and I often stopped before I needed to charge the car. The car's watts per mile average is 2.42 or 4.1 miles a kilowatt hour. So the range degradation of the car levels off. However, if it did not, it would still give me a life of over 300,000 miles for this car. Tesla guaranteed the batteries for 8 years or 100,000 miles. I charge mostly at home, and Tesla superchargers went away. But if there wasn't a Tesla supercharger, I would use GridServe or Charge Place Scotland, depending on where I was. But I always avoided the expensive public chargers owned by the fossil fuel companies. So it's true, EVs are more expensive to buy, but much cheaper to run on electric, as well as repairs, servicing, etc. They are much better to drive, and the many comments I get on here from owners say they could never go back. The negative comments are always from people who haven't had an electric vehicle, especially a Tesla. So at the beginning of this, I said, would I buy a new Tesla Model 3 again? Thanks for staying this long to the end and found out if I would or not. And the answer is no, I would not buy a new Tesla Model 3 again. But I would buy a used second-hand model, around about £20,000, a few years old, with under 50,000 miles on the clock. Because there are now 4 years of used Tesla Model 3s on the road, there's a lot to choose, and that's what I would do. Quite a lot around about the £20,000 price. Also, 2 years ago, when thinking about buying a Tesla, I also considered an MG, and I think it's a great car for under £25,000. That would also be a good deal, and it's obviously not as good as a Tesla, but it's certainly worth looking at. I think it all very much depends on what you want from the car. The Tesla is great in all conditions, but particularly good with the Tesla superchargers. But obviously a lot of manufacturers are now teaming up with Tesla, so you could buy another brand and still use the Tesla superchargers. You can use some of their superchargers if you pay a subscription, but it's only some, probably not enough to make that much difference unless you live close to one. I think if you don't need the Tesla superchargers, then the MG could be a very good alternative. Oh, and yes, depreciation, yes, it has gone down quite a lot in 2 years, but within 6 months of buying the car, I could have sold it for more than I paid for it. So it swings and roundabouts, and I've really got no plans for selling it. So thank you very much for getting this far. Hope you can like and subscribe and leave any comments down below. Don't forget to take your reusable coffee mug wherever you go. You get discounts in lots of places, and it saves using one of those horrible plastic cups or paper cups with a plastic lining that can't be recycled, although everyone believes that they are, and they end up on landfill. Thanks for watching. Drive safely, take care, see you next time, bye.